Thank you. I mean, I had this great intro set up, but you just nailed it there for me. Thank you. Okay, quick thing. Obviously, filmmaker. These are the projects I've worked on. Just to give you a little context of my background, very much live action, director, producer, working on shows like feature films and TV shows. Very visual effects heavy. And then a couple of years ago, I set up a production company to create my own content, specifically in the world of real time. Give you a little context what the company is like. This is essentially what the company is. Bunch of generalists that can do multiple things, all using Unreal Engine, using real time, all Amazon Web Server driven, and just pretty much just having fun, being creative, and trying to have minimal technical bottlenecks. That's essentially our studio, and I swear it's going to be the last flow chart, you'll see. But this is pretty much how the studio is set up. We set up the company with Unreal Engine at the core and built from there. Whereas like other studios have tried to adopt real-time, whereas we built the company real-time upwards. But that doesn't mean that everything has to be done in Unreal. We have artists that use Blender, Cinema 4D, 3D Max, Maya. As long as they export their material in like Alembic or FBX or even into Unreal, then once it comes in Unreal, it stays in Unreal, and we do everything in Unreal. And I mean everything, lighting, animation, the works. We built specific tools, as I'm going to share. And we deliver final pixels, so what you see is what you get. So there's no compositing or anything, which is kind of like the dark side for me, because I started off as a compositor in visual effects, but we're doing no comping. Bit about this, because I should. Obviously, AWS. I'm not going to go too detailed, because Paolo did an amazing presentation before me, but for us, we're not technical guys. We're an artist-driven company. So when it comes to technicalities, we can do blueprints. We can code in terms of developing video games and scripts for to do our work. But any of the IT side of things is kind of not what we do. But the way AWS is set up, it makes it very easy for us to do that. And we use Perforce to do all of our asset control and source control and version control, which is, so my point is, the reason why we're able to have so much fun creating content, because we have a really solid infrastructure in the first place to allow us to do that. Might as well show you what my home studio looks like. Yeah, there is a lot of retro games up there, and I swear it's research purposes only. But obviously my Wacom Cintiq is a big part of my process as a director, where I get the concept, I get to do a lot of work in Unreal, which I'm going to show you that as well. But pretty much that's, a lot of my colleagues that we all work remotely, that's pretty much our setup. So we're very, very grungy, very guerrilla-like, but we deliver high-end commercial work. And just so you know, HaZimation is not a service company, we're a production company, so we develop our own IP. So speaking of IP, our first IP is a full-on 93-minute feature film called Rift, which we started in October 2020. We had done a bunch of short films before that. Epic have been amazing partners in terms of spotlighting our projects. One of them was Mutant Year Zero, based on the video game. But when it came to really pushing the company's infrastructure and the team, we thought, we may as well go deep dive and just jump in and make an animated feature film. So I'm going to show you guys an exclusive 2-minute clip. Usually I'll just say, don't film it, but I bet people are going to take their phones out anyway. But this doesn't come out until next year. We're still in post-production. And when I say post-production, I don't mean picture post-production. There's no visual effects, just mainly color grading. But here's 2 minutes, and this is all final pixels straight out of Unreal. So the only thing that's been done in there is a bit of color correction. Okay, enjoy. So imagine 90 minutes of that. So now I'm going to talk about how we put that together. And like I said, we started October 2020. We're now August the 10th. Oh my God, time flies. And we're going into audio post in a few weeks' time. So it's basically a year and a half to make a full 90-minute animated feature film, delivered 4K HDR as well out of Unreal Engine. Okay, so first off, to make a movie like this with a small team of people, the director has to take a different mindset. So my style of directing is very hands-on. Even with live action, I've been very hands-on. But to make films like this, you essentially have to be doing a lot of that in your front room. And so I did a lot of virtual cinematography. But also, this gives you a little insight of what my day-to-day is like as a director working on Unreal. I use the sequencer a lot. So for those of you not familiar with sequencer, it's like an editorial timeline. And I literally control everything and anything in the shot. So from the timing of the animation to the timing of the bullet hits and the muzzle flashes and everything I have control on, which is a luxury a lot of directors don't have, because you have to send that message as an email or as a note, whereas I can just go in and do that, and my artist can just focus on doing the stuff that I can't do or can't do very well, which is build amazing characters, build amazing assets, and do things like environments and build blueprints for me and so on. So yeah, so that's imagine that like working a year and a half like this. So super fun. It's going to be really hard for me to go back to live action after this, by the way. So yeah. But to do this, to have that level of control, you can't just use Unreal Engine vanilla. I mean, there's a lot you can do in Unreal Engine vanilla, of course. But to give me control as a director, my head of CG and director Tetchi built a lot of tools for me. And between me and you, I think he built that so that I don't break things, because I've got a bad habit of breaking things. So he built these really cool tools that really allowed me to animate doors. And these are kind of basic rigs that you would get in things like Maya. But for me to control that in sequencer and control the speed of the wheel and so on was a bit of a game changer for me. Even things like attaching objects to the hand sockets, I can do that at the click of a button, and we have like a list of assets that we build, and we update it in the table, or the data table, and I can just do that at the click of a button. And the cool thing is, as we bring on more artists and start to ramp up, we originally started with 3 people, with 5, then we ramped up to 12, 13, those guys can just come in and jump straight in. They don't have to figure out what the mess is, they just use the tools that we built in Unreal, and they can just use those tools and just continue doing the shots. Even down to adjusting performances as well. We don't do dailies in the same way like visual effects dailies is. Usually you do a quick time, you put it through a timeline, you review it, coordinate it, makes a bunch of notes, send it to the supervisor and so on, and it's like a bit of a process. Typical Zoom session for us is this. We share our screen, we share our Unreal Engine screen, and we run through the shots. Each sequencer file is a shot. Each level is an environment. That's kind of like our shot structure. And then we can just go and make adjustments on the fly. We built like a system in Unreal. It's like additive animation. So we have motion capture data, which is using Xsens at the bottom. We built some tools that exposes the controls, like blinking. I'm a pedantic guy when it comes to eyeline and blinking. It really drives me mad. So he built these tools that allow me to do that, and I can just do that. So by the time we finish our 1-hour daily session, 95% of the notes have been addressed. Now, of course, if there's things that need to be rebuilt, then that's a different thing. But in terms of tweaks, that's how fast. So that's how we're able to get so much done very quickly. But of course, we still have to rely on the traditional live action way of doing things, which is directing actors. So, I have so much fun working with Xsens in terms of their inertia suits. It's because I get to go on this this is basically a grading suite in a post-production studio that we rented. Unless I rented, when you're a buddy there. And I'm able to direct him and see the result in the XN viewer. And then by the time we finish our session, Ace will then give it to a technical artist to process it. We bring it into Unreal, and within 24 hours, I've got the data ready to use. I mean, it's amazing how fast we can do that. We can go and do reshoots if we need to. But I also did a lot of Xsens directing during COVID. Remotely. And so this is what a typical Zoom session looks like. So Gabriella, who's based in Florida, had an XN suit and a Manus glove, and we're able to direct all these sessions. Obviously, these sessions took a little bit longer, because obviously remotely and so on, but it's still the same thing. I get to direct her, and I also get to plan and prep like you would do on a real live action shoot, which is you do your blocking, you do your script breakdown, and you just run it like a live action shoot. To me, remote directing isn't as scary anymore, because it feels like the real thing, except you've got to make sure you have good Wi-Fi. Here's an example of Alex Kong, who's one of our lead animators. He's was based in Montreal, he's now based in Vancouver. And this is sort of where I can see his performance on the iPhone. We use an iClone to do a lot of the facial animation. And it's just a really great way of collaborating with my artists, and it's all very instant, right? Here's another example how we use an iClone here to do facial animation. So this is me using iClone, but I'm not an animator per se, but I'm able to go in there and experiment with various facial expressions and then pitch that to my animator and say, hey, this is the sort of thing I'm looking for. Whereas before, in other animated films I've worked on, I've had to really do storyboards or or kind of act it out in live action, right? And just show them references. Well, I can just go and experiment in here. And 80% of the time, they just end up using that anyway. Creating crowds is a big thing, and this is something we did last 4 months. We decided, let's really up the premium quality of this movie. And one of my favorite directors is Ridley Scott, and I love how he uses crowds and all these wide shots to give it that expensive look and epic look. See what I did there, a little pun, epic, okay. I've had way too much coffee. But basically, what's really cool about this is crowds are usually very expensive to do and very hard to do. And we use this thing called Atoms, which is from a company called Tool Chefs. And literally, I'll show you an example, actually. This is all running in real time. It's all running in real time, 60 frames per second, and then we render it as EXRs, and what you see is what you get. But what's cool is it uses like agents, like a bit of AI agents, and so we'll have all our characters ready, our generic characters, and then we'll position them in a certain way, and then we run these like AI agents to basically scatter them, and that includes like the type of animation that they're doing, the sort of like chantings that they're doing, but to make them not feel like they're repetitive, we run like a randomizer on that. So basically, this is kind of, I'm just kind of flicking through it here, but this is kind of what and then we'd end up with something like this, which would usually take weeks to do. We just did this I think within 2 days, where it had this. So yeah, so that's crowds for you. Okay, so that's the animated film. But at the same time, we end up making a video game. Why not, right? And so how that actually came about was basically, because I wanted to do some animation that required physics, I didn't want to animate the car physics, so I ended up just driving a car in the game engine and recording that. But we had so much fun that we realized, why don't we just use the assets that we have in the movie and use it in the game? And we can, because the way we built the assets were very, very optimized. The reason we built them optimized for a movie, which we didn't have to, but we did, because I didn't want to work in a wireframe mode or unlit mode or render stuff out to have a look at it. I wanted to work very instantly, because I'm a very impatient director. So all our assets are built very game-like, and it's very stylized. So when it came to making the game, we shifted all of our film assets into the game project and literally focused on coding. And so by the time we finish the movie, we also have a video game. In fact, this is actually available on Steam, not the full game, but the early access, just a way to test the audience base. You can actually download it and play it. So the fact that, making a video game as well as a movie, I never thought I'll combine those two projects together and say them in a single sentence, but we can. But also, we're starting to do a VR experience, why not? So this is, I'm going to show you, this is not even out yet. This probably won't be out until like late next year. This is something, we wanted to migrate our team into Unreal Engine 5. And this is a project we used the Wacom Cintiq to do some actual development work with. And it's a VR project, and it's all done in Unreal Engine 5. And here's a little sneak, very, very early rough version, but it gives you an idea. There's some cinematics along with some VR footage. Okay, maybe just the VR footage. It's all done this is all captured via the Oculus, by the way. The Oculus Quest. And we're able to put this together, I don't know, like in a week. Just experiment what it would be like to work in VR. And it really changes the way I think as a storyteller, because all the rules are kind of changed when you're in VR. You kind of can't force people to look in a certain way. Yeah, the pitch for this is Cloverfield meets Gravity on the moon. That's the Hollywood pitch. There you go, so that's Moonopia. We're currently in development on that. So yeah, so like I said earlier, we used the amazing Cintiq to do some work on that, and this is all Unreal Engine 5. And so first off, using the Cintiq with Unreal is fun. It's cool. I'm able to move stuff around in a very organic way. But what was really interesting was the fact that we realized we weren't getting the same efficient speed as you would with a mouse and keyboard, but it was so much fun using the Cintiq to do certain things like this. I can be really organic with the way I move things, but it wasn't as fast and efficient. And, whoops. And the reason for that was because we were treating it like a mouse and keyboard. So working closely with Wacom, what we're able to do is develop a bunch of touch OSC tools. Now, I'm not going to go into too much detail of this because there's a full-on half-an-hour presentation I'm doing tomorrow, and you can speak to Erica over at Wacom over there, who'll give you details. But I'm going to go a deep dive and explain how we developed a bunch of tools that allows us to use Unreal Engine with Wacom Cintiq in a very efficient way. But this is just a little tease I thought I'd throw in there. Okay, but how do we evolve the business of storytelling further from just making animated films and video games? The metaverse, yeah. Everyone's talking about it, man. It's that hashtag metaverse, the most hashtag thing this year. But it's really interesting because we had an esports company approach us and say, we'd love for you to do a trailer. So we did a trailer for them, and it's really just to show how you can do gamification in the world of retail and esports and virtual concerts. Here you go, we use some more Atom crowds here as well. And it was a really good fun project, but what was really, and you can watch this online, by the way, so you go to HaZimation.com, you can see the entire 3-minute thing, how we visualized their metaverse project. But what was really interesting was they came back, we love it so much, can you do 10 more of these videos? And I'm like, wow, I mean, you guys are Web3, and this is metaverse, and you want to pitch in a very Web2, 1990s kind of vibe, like, you kind of want to rethink the way you pitch. That's very ballsy, by the way. And they were like, yeah, you're right. So what do you suggest? I'm like, well, first off, we made the entire trailer in Unreal Engine. We're in a game engine already. So why don't we just take that and really gamify it and present it as a prototype? They were like, oh my God, explosion. Obviously, me and you guys, we play video games like World of Warcraft and so on, so this to us is like moving a character in a 3D world is nothing special. But to people that deal with brands, people like tech financiers, and people that are really operating in the metaverse world, this is kind of like groundbreaking for them because they're so used to videos and pitch decks, and now they're able to pick up a controller and move around. But we did it even one step further. What we did was we did all of this, and we pixel streamed it. So what that means is it's pixel streaming on an Amazon web server somewhere, and we give them a web link, and most of these tech guys, they don't really want to have Unreal Engine installed, or let alone in the video graphics card, right? So they'll just get their iPads, and they're just moving around, and they're able to show this to their brands and their brand managers and so on. And all of a sudden, they're like, oh my God, this is like a brand new way of like doing business in the world of the metaverse and also pitching for metaverse projects. So now, you know, we've got a massive partnership with them where we're able to use our experience in virtual production filmmaking, video game development, and operate in the metaverse world. So from a business point of view, as a small studio, we don't really need investment from VCs. We can self-finance a lot of our own projects and then get additional finance if we need, because we can operate just by using metaverse projects as a way of keeping our company sustainable there. So there's a bit of business tip there for you. So in conclusion, and by the way, I've only been adopting in real time since 2019. Just so you know, it's not like I'm like, you know, a veteran in the world of real-time technology. But since 2019, I used it for previs, then I ended up making films in it, and now a feature film and a video game. We're producing animated feature films and series. We're game developers. We create in the metaverse. Essentially, we're creating for the future of content consumers. But the cool thing is, all of this is under one sustainable production ecosystem, which is Unreal Engine in AWS.